Hey everyone, and welcome to another video. So today I'm going to be reviewing Ashes in the Star-Cursed King by Carissa Broadbent, and I just finished reading it, so my bookmark is actually still in there because I have bonus content and I was in the middle of the bonus scene, but I did finish the main book and I'm kind of not interested in the bonus scene actually, so I'm going to be reviewing the book. I started this January 1st, and it is January 7th for me because I haven't gone to bed yet, although it will list it as the 8th on Goodreads and Fable and all that stuff. So this is the sequel to The Serpent and the Wings of Night by the same author. So these two go together. And also Six Scorched Roses by Carissa Broadbent as well, which goes in between these two books. So basically, yeah, this is a Crowns of Naxia book. So basically, anything that I talk about this book, even in vague, like even talking about it vaguely, will spoil the first book. So if you don't want any spoilers for the first book, then click away. But I'm going to try to do my best without spoiling anything. But basically the main character, Rain and Aurea. First of all, Rain, the main guy character, we actually add his perspective to the book, which the first book was only from Aurea's perspective, so I really did enjoy getting Rain's perspective on everything. And one of the main things that I love, first of all, is that this book is gorgeous. So the main book itself, but then you have the hardback, is absolutely just gorgeous. And then also the quote on the back, love is a sacrifice to the altar of power. And then the interior design is absolutely beautiful. So each chapter has like that kind of stuff. And then when the book she divides into parts. So like the interior, the map is actually really beautiful. Let me see if I can get the map open. Pages are sticking together. So there's the map, which is absolutely gorgeous. And then she divides it into parts, like part 1, night, part 2, full moon, part 3, crescent moon, something like that. And after each part, and she did this in the first book too, but after each part is, except for the first one and the last one, but after most of the parts in the book is these scenes that she calls interludes, which the first book were flashbacks to different pieces of Aurea, the main girl, her life. And she doesn't actually come out and say Aurea's name. She just says the little girl or the young woman or whatever. And they're really short. They're really flowery language, but not overly dramatic. It's actually like really, really well written, and it gives you glimpses of important beats in the main character's life instead of just like only introducing it through dialogue or internal thought process and stuff. Like, it's a really fascinating concept. And in this one, the interludes are all about Rain and his life, and it was so fascinating because he's a really interesting character, and there's a lot about him that we didn't know in the first book that was kind of hinted to, that he eventually, like, we finally got it toward the end of the first book. So the first book ends in a major cliffhanger with like several twists, and the beginning of this is kind of like the fallout of those twists and everything, and the main characters in the situation that they're in. And I will admit that it's like an enemies to lovers to enemies again, so the majority of the book they're like enemies again. And I really love the places that both characters are in, because Aurea, she has this trauma and this situation that she's in that she has to deal with. Rain is in a situation he's dealing with, and also kind of dealing with his past kind of interfering with where he is right now, and it creates this interesting situations for them, really. And it also puts them in a really difficult place romantically, to the point when I first started this, I was like, I don't know how they're going to fix their relationship, because again, enemies to lovers to enemies again, and it's done in a realistic way without being cheesy or rushed. It's actually like very, very realistic, and you feel for both characters. So yeah, I will say the first one had more action. They joined this thing called the Kajari, which was like a Hunger Games like situation, but for vampires. It was very, very like adultish and a lot more violent and graphic than the Hunger Games. Whereas this one is focused more on politics and political stuff. So I really loved the political scheming and maneuvering. And I think I did a video about it. I don't know if I've ever posted it, but if I did, I'll find it here. But it's like you have many different characters, each with their own agendas, creating these situations, and it really puts you in a perspective where you don't know who to trust, even though you do have Aurea's perspective and Rain's perspective, but you still don't know who to trust. So Aurea's relationship with her father was a big part of her character in book 1, and it does carry over into book 2, and the situations and kind of trauma, and like it deals with a lot of like, how do I want to say this, like false belief systems and like manipulation, and like it's just handled really, really well. There's also a lot of dealing with trauma and overcoming trauma in this book, and the author does handle like PTSD very well. There are spicy scenes, so there are 2 big ones that take up whole chapters toward the middle-ish end, kind of leading up to or before the big climactic situation, and then there's a tiny one after several big climactic situations, but before another big situation is going to happen, and it was kind of like a really quick, like 1-page situation, but afterward. And so at first the big chapter ones, those 2 really started to get annoyed like with me, and not necessarily because of this, because I feel like they did kind of work in the scene, similar to A Court of Silver Flames, where it had like a purpose-ish. It wasn't just thrown in there, because the majority of the book they don't, and it kind of builds up to it, and it's kind of like earned, if that makes sense. But I will say I still got annoyed with it, and this was a problem I had with the genre as a whole, where it's like, oh, all you guys want to do with each other is get spicy and hang out. Like, do you not do anything else when you hang out? But after that final quick one, which I skipped reading, it actually had like a big, like really good, I love like what real love is, and like he's like, we could spend these last few moments together in carnal pleasure, but I just want to hold her and like count her freckles and like focus on her breathing, and you know, loving somebody is way more than that, and it goes over, and it's really deep, and it's really true, and it's like loving somebody is loving the most vulnerable parts of yourself, and like letting them see who you are, and like them loving the parts about yourself that you really hate, and knowing that they see parts of you that you really don't want them to see. And that's kind of what Aurea does for him, and what he does for Aurea. And it's like a beautiful message, and there is a lot of themes about love in this book. The fight scenes, that they are still fight scenes in there, it's just not quite as action-packed throughout the majority of the book as the last one. But the boss fight, I feel like it's actually what I would consider a proper boss fight, like outline. Like if I ever described how to do a boss fight or a climatic situation, like how I would describe to you the beats that you should be doing, it would be like that. And I've done that in my books before, where it's like you gear toward what you think is like a boss fight, climatic situation, dramatic moment. We stop, we come back, we rest, and then it gears up toward the big boss fight. You gather your forces, and then you go and you do the boss fight, but something goes wrong, there's a twist there, and then you have to have kind of a beat, a break, and then it like secondary twist, big epic thing, and then the climactic situation, and then that's when you can kind of do the final twists, and then the wrap up, and then everything else, depending on how you want to end your book. And it's literally just the structure that I feel like absolutely works for a big fantasy boss battle fight thing. And I really do it. Love it. One of my biggest praises, though, overall, is Carissa Broadbent is a master writer, and I love her writing style. There's not a whole lot of editing. Like, the commas are off. But actually, I've noticed all of these mainstream authors do commas incorrectly, so I don't know if it's like, oh, we're mainstream authors, so it's like a different rule than the rest of us or something, but it's not enough to take me out of it. But the way that she puts words together, she has this like flowery way of writing that's not too overly dramatic, but really packs a punch. And I seriously have never met an author that wrote lines that like hit hard, not in a I'm learning a lesson, but just like they're so well written. And I actually want to get like another copy and annotate this book, because there were so many good quotes, and I didn't want to like ruin the book because it's so pretty. But I'm telling you, like, any author who wants to like learn more or perfect their writing style should read Carissa Broadbent. Just skip the spicy scenes, because she's so good. Like, I want to read you some of these quotes because they're just so good, and I won't give you guys spoilers or anything. Okay, hold on. Okay. Loving Aurea was terrifying. It required me to see the things that I didn't want to see, face things I didn't want to face, allow another soul to witness parts of myself I didn't even want to acknowledge. I now felt like such a fool that I had never thought of it in that way, with that word, until this moment. Of course it was love. What else could it be? For someone to see that much of you, to see so much beauty in the parts of someone that they hate in themselves. Ugh, it's just so good. Helps more with context, but there's just like, I'm not kidding, there are so many, like, just the way that she puts words together is just so good. Oh, she's easily becoming my favorite author, even above Sarah J. Maas and Rebecca Yarros. Like, I love ACOTAR and I love Fourth Wing, and I love this series, the Crown of Naxia series, but like Carissa Broadbent is a better writer than Rebecca Yarros and Sarah J. Maas, even though I would say Sarah J. Maas is arguably bigger and better known, and I would say Fourth Wing kind of went viral. I don't know how viral or big these books have gotten yet. So I love them. I also really love another concept that's kind of like interesting about this series, mainly because I had a fantasy series of my own that I was doing where it was like a romantasy series, and each book was a different couple, but I ended mine in cliffhangers, and so they were going to need follow-up books, but I was like, this is already part of a series that is a series set within a universe, so I can't name it like 3 other series, so I was like, I don't know what to do, and so I just kind of left it alone. Well, what she did was, these are all part of the Crowns of Naxia series, so they're all part of the Crowns of Naxia, right? Well, what she did was she creates a series of duologies. So these 2 are books 1 and 2 of the Nightborn duet, which is set in the Night Court and is about one couple, Aurea and Rain. This is a short novel set in between those. This is the 3rd book in the series, but the 1st book in the 2nd set of duologies, which is book 1 of the Shadow duet. And so book 4 will be the 2nd in the Shadow duet, and then the next one after that will be the other one. And so she basically does a series of duologies that is like, this is one couple, this starts the 2nd duology, so it's like another couple basically, and then you also, if you look at it, these 2 books look similar, but they share the same color scheme, like blue and silver. And this one, it looks similar enough you can tell it's the same series, but the color scheme is different, so it's like red and gold, and so it sets the duologies apart, and it is genius. And so it gave me ideas for my series on how to structure it, just because I've never seen a series structured this way before. And so the other thing that I like is her world building is so creative. Like, the vampires that she's built in this are so different than other vampire species. I feel like she's ruined vampires for me, because I don't think I'm ever going to find a book series that I enjoy vampires as much as I've enjoyed this one. I do have From Blood and Ash, and I didn't know this, but it's a vampire series too, so we'll see when I read that one what I think. But it's like, she's built the houses, and the magic system is so cool, and the political scheming, so she's really built the side characters. For a good politics book, you have to build the characters, because characters are everything in a political situation, because every character has to be so three-dimensional that they have their own agendas, but you don't know what it is, and it creates all these schemes and stuff. And so her like side characters really shine in this, and I cannot emphasize enough how much I love Aurea and I love Rain. And one of the things that I praised about The Serpent and the Wings of Night in my review, which I'll have here as a card, was that I feel like Carissa Broadbent does strong female leads really well, and I noticed that in Sixth Scorched Roses as well, the main character in that book, because like with Aurea in The Serpent and the Wings of Night, she is a human in the world of vampires, and so she like is always aware of her weaknesses and that she's the weakest one in the room, so she has to fight and she has to be strong just to survive. And in this one, she has a lot that she's working through and realizing a lot about herself and kind of grows into herself, but she still has to face so many losses and so many lessons along the way, and there's no arrogance behind it. It's literally just kind of who she is and like how she had to be in order to survive, and because of the circumstances around her past. And it's just it's literally a strong female lead done right. That I've never seen one that like, it's just hard to find in this genre because it's so saturated with like, oh, I'm a strong female and I don't need a man. And there was a little bit of like feminism where like she would get to shine, but like the boss fight especially was like Rain got to shine, and it was like one of those things where I don't like when the male characters are diminished and like, oh, you have a strong female lead, so that means the men are going to be bumbling idiots, or where she's going to get to do all the fighting and he just does nothing. But like Rain really got his time to shine. And there's also like, for a good romance, you want those drama moments where you're just like, your heart gasps and you're like, no, and you're like freaking out, and there are definitely a lot of those moments in here too. there's a lot of moments where you get feels and stuff. So honestly, for me, this is a 5-star read. I was really addicted to it, and I finished it in a week. It's been 7 days for me. I haven't gone to bed yet, and I started it on January 1st. And it's one of those books where, like, in the evening when I wind down, I could sit and watch YouTube because that helps me relax after working, especially since I've been editing my book. I thought it would be hard for me to read because, like, you're editing, you're reading, you can't shut your editing brain off. So reading is not relaxing. It's more stressful, and you just want to mind numb and do something that your brain can shut off with. But I enjoyed this book. It helped me actually get into reading because I was enjoying this book so much. Like, that was the activity I wanted to do in the evenings every night, and that's what I did. So I really enjoyed it. 5 stars for me. And Carissa Broadbent is my new favorite author, and this is definitely one of my top favorite fantasy series of all time. I don't think I'm immediately going to jump into the next one, but you'll have to watch me and my cousin's Pens and Paperbacks, our TBR list for that, to see what we read next and stuff. We've been reading books and talking about them and other bookish content and stuff. She's actually reading the 3rd book in this series, The Songbird in the Heart of Stone. So if you want to check all that out, I'll have a link to our podcast. You can subscribe below. And yeah, so thank you guys so much for watching. Have you read this book in the series? If so, what do you think? If you liked this video, please be sure to give it a like and subscribe for more writing and reading videos every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And in the meantime, if you enjoyed my review of Ashes in the Star-Cursed King, then check out my review of the 1st book, Serpent in the Wings of Night. I'll have it here as a card. It was really good too, and I give you all my amazing details coming into the series. It was totally new and unique, so you don't want to miss it.